And now, here's Mike Muse with the political news.
So let's get right to it and meet the candidates.
That completes the opening statement.
We're going to get right to it.
On Sway in the morning.
All right. Mike Muse.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Ladies
How are
and
you,
gentlemen,
man?
the Mike Muse Show, the hottest sensation on the POTUS Network. Ladies and gentlemen,
Get him. What's up,
get
Sway?
on that intersection between culture, music, politics, life, health, spirituality, all takes place on that one show.
On Saturdays at 1 p.m. on the POTUS channel 124.
Mike, I was sick yesterday.
Yes.
Thank you for reaching out.
Yeah, no problem, brother.
Okay, thank you. I set my alarm clock to watch the State of the Union address. President Donald Trump delivered his first State of the Union address last night. I understand it was a lengthy speech. He revisited his accomplishments over his first year in office and offered a handful of proposals. Mike Muse, I was in and out because I had taken some medication.
Yes.
You know, that opioids thing is really big in my house.
Hey.
All right. So and they worked. What
That's
can you tell
strong
me about
medicine.
last night? What was the overall consensus? Where did he do well? Where do you feel like he wavered, if at all? Is he receiving backlash? Where are we, Mike Muse?
Yo, Sway, so yesterday was a very fascinating State of the Union address. And for all those who are waiting for President Trump to become a one-term president, for all those who believe that President Trump won't make it past the midterm elections, you might need to think twice about that notion yesterday. And to me, the State of the Union really represented why President Trump could get reelected for a second term. As we all know, the presidential election isn't based on a popular vote, but it's based on electoral college, and it's really based upon a partisanship in your base. And President Trump really zoned in on his base, from what the GOP stands for to their platforms and to their issues. And here's a little piece of it right now, straight from the president's mouth.
Small business confidence is at an all-time high. The stock market has smashed one record after another. In April, this will be the last time you will ever file under the old and very broken system, and millions of Americans will have more take-home pay starting next month. We repealed the core of the disastrous Obamacare. The individual mandate is now gone. Houston's reverence for those who have served our nation reminds us of why we salute our flag, why we put our hands on our hearts for the Pledge of Allegiance, and why we proudly stand for the national anthem.
Oh, wow. He brought that up. With the Super Bowl coming, we have to rehash the kneeling, huh?
He absolutely
Absolutely
did.
we do.
He absolutely
Let's keep
did.
it talking. Let's keep the conversation going.
All day. He doesn't stop. And I'm going to do a deep dive into the facts, right, in terms of what was factually correct and what was factually incorrect. But on face value, if you are an average, a citizen who doesn't have time to read up on politics, to watch politics, it sounded great if you're a Republican conservative. He had all the talking points from economics. He had all the talking points from the stock market. He had all the talking points in terms of patriotism and standing for the national anthem. He had all the talking points for healthcare, repealing Obamacare. Really, the small business confidence has gone up, which is really a reflection. The stock market has gone up, so then the consumer confidence has gone up. So he really zoned in on all the Republican talking points. He also began to switch gears to another talking point when it came to immigration. And so this is when the tone changed of his speech. And so the first clip that we played was the first half of this hopeful, optimistic, America is great, but then it turned dark right into this section of immigration.
Tonight I am calling on Congress to finally close the deadly loopholes that have allowed MS-13 and other criminal gangs to break into our country. We have proposed new legislation that will fix our immigration laws and support our ICE and Border Patrol agents. I am extending an open hand to work with members of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, to protect our citizens of every background, color, religion, and creed. And the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too.
That part was a popular line in terms of Americans or dreamers too. That goes directly.
He got a lot of backlash, right, for that.
During this section of the speech, he
yeah.
got a lot of backlash, and because and if you're a Republican, this is right up your alley. This is immigration. This is securing the border. This is protecting America from those who are other, who you feel will come in and do harm to you. And what he did was he appealed to that. It's one thing to take that stance on immigration, but it's one thing to introduce it through the lens of MS-13. And we've talked about MS-13 a number of times on this show, which is a South American gang who has been able to come over here to the United States and essentially has done harm to lots of individuals, just like every other gang affiliation who are Americans who've also done the same thing. But he introduced this immigration topic sway by having, as you know, optics matter. It's all about who sits in the First Lady's box, who are the guests. And it really is almost a secondary narrative of what driving home the factors of what you're trying to convey. And in the First Lady's box way, he had two sets of parents of deceased children who were murdered at the hands of MS-13. And so that's how he introduced immigration reform. And so essentially, Sway, he conflated the two issues of DACA and the Dreamers with a gang and murder by then having the parents of the children who was deceased there to emphasize a point. That's when it got dark. That's when it got exploitative. And that was when it was a false equivalency to MS-13, to immigrants and immigration, and to really the Dreamers and to DACA, who are law-abiding citizens of this country.
The college students.
They're college students. They serve in our military.
The family members. The family leaders. They're everything we are.
They are. And if they do get in trouble, even if they are underneath the President Obama executive order, if they do get in trouble, then they have to be sent back to wherever their home country is because they got into trouble. So for him to introduce that from the narrative was, really unfortunate scenario to conflate those two. Also, too, Sway, now we're going to get into some of the things where there was bipartisanship. So there was a bipartisanship notion when he talked about infrastructure. So that is both a Republican and a Democratic value on that.
Let's talk about some of those things where bipartisanship.
Yes.
And then also, how did the Democrats, normally after the State of the Union, the opposite party, the other party comes out and says something in rebuttal, so I want to find out about that as well.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to open up the phone lines. Any comments on the State of the Union address by President Trump last night, 888-742-3345.
Hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. Boys, yeah. Hold on, we them boys. We them boys. Hold on, we making noise. Hold on. We them boys. We them boys. We making noise. We them boys. Pop a bottle. If you suck and swallow, smell that marijuana, they gon' follow. Throwing money on her like she won a lotto. Pussy must be serious. Scared of heights, come face your fears. Hold up. Do it just like Nikki, gone and bend it over. Say she never smoked, I turned her to a stoner. Young nigga, but I'm ready. Foreign girls call me sexy. And white girls give me Becky. But first I gotta roll this joint, baby. Hold up. We them boys. We them boys. We making noise. Hold up. We them boys. We them boys. We making noise. We them boys.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Hold up. You drive me crazy. Number one, bitch, you can't replace me. Lead a cloud, these hoes be trying to chase me. You got an ass so fat, let's make a baby. Damn, I'm smoking weed in my Mercedes. Hold up, these niggas broke, these niggas lazy. Man, they money slim, they acting shady. I'm in my brand new car, who wanna race? Oh, bitch, you ain't on my phone, so why you showing up? Never. I'm taking them shots on my niggas, they loaded up. Man on the low, all these hoes be acting so material. Hold up. Man, did you see her interior? Hold up. We them boys. Hold up. We them boys. Hold up. We making noise. Hold up.
Now more of the Daily News on Sway in the Morning.
All right, we're talking about the State of the Union address by President Trump last night. Mike Muse is here. We're just talking about what happened. You got an opinion? 888-742-3345. We got Jonathan from Massachusetts on the line. Jonathan, go ahead. What up? It's Jonathan. Good morning, Jonathan.
Hey, what's going on, Sway?
How you doing, bro? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, man. You're one of my favorites, man.
Oh, I appreciate that, Jonathan, man. You're a citizen, brother.
Sway in the morning.
What are your thoughts about last night's State of the Union?
So I didn't actually get to watch the whole thing, but I have the CNN app. I watch pretty much every single clip. I keep up with every single story every day. I work 50 hours a week, so it's kind of hard to keep up with everything, but I look for it every day on my phone.
Okay.
And the more and more I hear about this, it just makes me a little bit more sad. And let me tell you a little bit why. You know, I understand, trust me, I understand, Donald Trump's views or honestly some Republicans' views of, this is our country, we need to protect our country. But what he fails to realize is, and what a lot of people fail to realize is look at me, for example. I came here when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
I thought, my parents brought me here for a better life. My childhood was here. Nothing changed. I did first grade here all the way up to a year in college. Right now I'm a full-time working individual. But, someone like me in my situation, I don't know anything about Brazil. That's where I'm from. And the crazy thing is just...
What do you want to say, Jonathan? What is it you want to say? Jonathan,
say it again?
What is it you want to say?
What I want to say is DACA dreamers are not MS-13. You can't generalize, millions of people, 11 million of us. He already tried to take away people from renewing the DACA. I was one of the people that were able to renew. But what I'm trying to say is you can't send people home that have grew up here, that's been here since the ages from 2 to 3 or 2. I mean, any age to be, for the matter of fact. If you grew up here, you shouldn't be able to take that away from us. Okay. I pay taxes. I do my dues, everything, and I'm a law-abiding citizen. I have nothing. I don't do anything wrong.
Yeah, you have nothing to do with MS-13 or gang violence or doing anything illegal or criminal or any of those things. Is what you're saying. So that's a broad stroke that doesn't apply, but to every immigrant that came over here to this into this country. I get that, Jonathan. I think that's what a lot of folks have been arguing. I think that's what a lot of the backlash has been in terms of this approach to immigration.
Exactly, and immigration is so comprehensive, and so the DACA is totally separate from the border wall. The border wall is totally separate from traditional immigration, and so it's just you can't conflate these issues, and they have to be isolated and taken one demographic at a time.
Okay, hey Jonathan, thanks for your call. Mike Muse, we got to do a quick run. Facts or no facts? What are we talking about?
Yes. So there was a couple of things that was curious about what came from the speech. The North Korea part of the speech was interesting. He had two individuals who represented the parents of the child who was essentially jailed for committing a crime, and subsequently, when he returned home, he passed away. Then we also had a North Korean dissident who now lives in South Korea who was there. In a way, President Trump was trying to determine and really set the platform for how North Korea is this negative, bad regime that does harm to its people. People were really confused about where he was going with that. He didn't really bring that to a close. We don't know if he's setting up to build a case to go to war with North Korea. It was just there. It didn't really connect the dots in terms of that. He is going to continue opening up Guantanamo Bay. And also, the part that was incorrect, Sway, was about chain migration. You heard a lot of boos and hissing when he mentioned that. He said because of chain migration, immigration, again, going to comprehensive immigration, which is completely separate from DACA, chain migration, comprehensive immigration reform. He said that those individuals who migrate over here will bring all of their family members and all their distant relatives over. That's not actually what chain migration is about. Chain migration only allows for you to bring your wife, your spouse, or your husband, your children, and your siblings and your parents. And then after that, Sway, there has to be a vetting and a background check associated with that. And then that's only when you get your green card can you allow that. Then the process of that can take anywhere from 15 to 25 years just to bring another relative over. And then on top of that, Sway, there actually are caps. We're talking caps around the 25,000 individuals who can come total per year from these different parts of the countries. The parts on the economy where he talked about, Sway, since the election, he says, quote, since election, we have created 2.4 million new jobs, including 200,000 new jobs in manufacturing alone. That's actually, the 2.4 million is correct. But he is lower on pace than what we've seen previously in the 7 years. We've seen 169,000 jobs per month underneath President Trump. Underneath President Obama, we saw 185 jobs per month. Another thing that wasn't accurate was, quote, after years of wage stagnation, we are finally seeing rising wages. What we've come to learn, Sway, is that the rising of the wages actually slowed since President Obama's term. Also, too,
where are you getting your information from?
This is all fact checks. If it's citizens, it's all data from the Department of Labor statistics, from the FDA. So I'm about to talk about the FDA here in a second. These are all the labor statistics, a notion of that. There's also too from the stock market and from the index, the S&P, all from those statistics from that notion.
Why are you the only person who doing? In fact, nobody challenges the facts. Is what I'm saying. Like
and that's what I was saying. So I started off by saying if you take his speech for face value and you don't do a deep dive, it sounds great and it sounds in favor of the GOP and what President Trump is doing, but then when he began to peel back the layers, some of the things he was saying just isn't accurate. But some of the things that were accurate, Sway, is that, quote, he said last year the FDA approved more new and generic drugs and medical devices than ever before in industry. That is absolutely correct. So the FDA approved 1,027 generic drugs. Also with energy, he split the hairs a little bit when he said, quote, we have ended the war on American energy and we have ended the war on beautiful clean coal. We are now very proudly an exporter of energy to the world, end quote. Part of that is true. We are now about to be we're net positive on exports of natural gas. But what the center of that, though, is that the coal industry is not adding any jobs, so he's not doing anything regarding that, but he's peeling back the legislation on that. When it comes to healthcare and prescription drugs, that is a fact. He is going to lower the prescription drugs. At least that is his goal and priority for that.
What did he say about the sanctions against Russia?
He didn't say anything about the sanctions against Russia, but in the speech he talked about the sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela and that he wants those sanctions to be more aggressive. What was interesting, though, Sway, was that before the State of the Union address came up, he actually said that the White House and the Secretary of State issued a statement saying they will not enforce the Russian sanctions that the Congress unanimously decided to impose on Russia from an amount of 520 congressmen to only 5 Congress individuals voted against it. And what the White House said was that they won't enforce it, and they believe that the idea of sanctions is enough to deter Russia from doing anything else. And so that was a very stark contrast between the two, is that he didn't mention Russia in terms of sanctions, but he did Venezuela and Cuba. The Democrats offered a rebuttal, Sway, regarding that, and we won't have enough time to play that here, Sway, but what's interesting about the Democrats, and the reason why I say the Democrats are in trouble, usually you have one Democrat that actually responds to the State of the Union. In this instance, we had 4 different Democrats issue different State of the Union addresses that have completely different messages and tones. So the Democrats have got to find a winning strategy if they want to win against President Trump, and it has to be more than we just don't like him. And so they have to have a clearer message. The official response was done by Congressman Joe Kennedy, who is the legacy of the Kennedy. Kind of sent the wrong message, Sway, to a Democrat's white male in a small town of Massachusetts. I don't know if that's the message that the Democrats want to go in terms of going into their demographics going forward.
Thank you, Mike Muse, man. I know we had a lot of other stuff to cover, but we got a lot of time left in the morning, so we may be able to get back to it. All right, Mike Muse?
Absolutely.
All right. If you guys want to talk to Mike Muse about the study, you got a lot of people called in. Sonny from Baltimore, Free from D.C., Napoleon from San Fran, D from Florida, Kyle from Georgia, D from Houston. Man, leave a voicemail. We're going to play it all back at the end of the show so the world can hear. You can reach Mike Muse directly at
I am Mike Muse, M-U-S-N-S-A-M-E on Twitter and Instagram.
We got sports up next.
Sway, a huge blowout took place last night. We're going to talk about it up next.
Shape
Alhamdulillah, check in with me.